Mate, you're an idiot. You've been fooling around. You're gone for 10.
Gone for
It's
10. That's what we're here for.
You know it, mate. It's the inaugural episode of the Gone for 10 show. I'm your host, the Larry Taylor. This is Antonio Rosina, the finest thing to come out of Italy since fettuccine. You know what I found out the other day, Antonio? I have to let you know this. Well, not the other day, but I realized like the fettuccine Boscaiola, not Italian at all.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a shock. I haven't heard that one before, but I'm gonna have to go do my own research because I can't believe that that's not from Italy. It's got to be
Do you
Italian.
seriously? Do you not know that?
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, man. Cream sauce. It's like forbidden in Italy.
Oh, you know what? As long as it's got pasta, it's got a bit of garlic. Every Italian's gonna be happy no matter what's in it.
That is true. But we're not here to talk about pasta because I could be here for 1 hour. But we're going to try and keep it in theme. So because this is the Gone for 10 show, we're going to try and keep our videos around the 10-minute mark. Now, we might go a little bit over, but that's okay. We follow the referee's rules, so it will be all right. If we're giving you good content, then make sure you are hitting that like button and do subscribe because I guarantee you this will be the hottest rugby league show in the YouTube world. This is something that you haven't seen before. Now, and normally Antonio and I would be sitting here talking about football, but we are big rugby league fans as well. So time to dip our toe into something a little bit different. Antonio, let's start by talking about your team, the Sydney Roosters. Now, if you look at last season, you started fairly strongly, and then Luke Keary does his ACL fairly early on into the season. And we have to say it was a very injury-ravaged season for the Sydney Roosters. In saying that, you still managed to finish in the finals despite all the injuries, all the suspensions, and you found a genuine superstar in Sam Walker. So give me a review of what you saw from last season, and what are your expectations going into this season?
Yeah, honestly, you hit the nail on the head. There was a lot of injuries last year. Definitely, if it was another team, it could have taken away their season. They could have found themselves outside the finals, but a lot of what the Roosters tried to adapt was the next man up. Every time there was an injury, every time there was a suspension, Trent Robinson just went to his locker room and said, okay, mate, you youngster, you're coming up. And like you said, we found Sam Walker, who arguably took control, obviously, with Luke Keary out. And it's definitely one that we're going to look forward to for the future. Obviously, Keary coming back in. You've got Lindsay Collins, who also did his ACL, coming back in. So there's a lot of troops come in. I think a top four, anything but a top four, I think is a loss for the Roosters this year. If they don't make that top four with all these troops coming back, we're definitely in trouble.
All right, well, talk to me about this season. Luke Keary's obviously going to come back. Like we mentioned, he's been out for a long period of time, but he's had a whole preseason. He's looking sharp. He's looking positive. He's enthusiastic about this season. Where do the Roosters finish? But crucially, how important is Luke Keary to how the Roosters perform this season? Because as we saw last season, I think, and this is very common with new players who burst onto the scene. I like Sam Walker. He's so talented, and I think they're his state of origin in this kid's future. But second-year syndrome has happened far too often for it to be a coincidence. So how crucial is Luke Keary to the Roosters' success this season? And what is your expectations? Where do you think the Roosters will finish?
Obviously, I think there's a lot of weight on Luke Keary's shoulders. He needs to really take control and take a lot of that pressure off Sam Walker. We saw last year, yes, he did win his big games. But when it did get down to crunch time, he was targeted. He was thrown around like a rag doll. He was attacked when we were defending on his line. So I think Luke Keary needs to come in. He needs to do a majority of the kicking and just let Sam Walker be that playmaker. Having said that, there is a lot of obviously options that we do have off the bench. Obviously, we do have Drew Hutchinson. I will bring this up. This is my prediction, Larry. I did go third. Obviously, you do have second. We do have a few ins, a few outs, but I think most notably we can look at that Paul Momorowski, Kevin Nguama, and Connor Watson. Obviously offers a lot. In saying that, I haven't gone top two like you because I do think Boyd Cordner and Jake Friend losing both captains is a massive loss. And obviously the defense that you have seen before, Brett and Josh Morris, obviously they did play for you. So I guess I'm going third because I think there are stronger teams in Penrith, Manly, who hit the ground running. But I'll throw it back to you. What are your predictions and why do you think we're going to come second?
Man, I look at that Roosters team and, yeah, I absolutely take your point. There is a loss in terms of experience there, particularly I think Jake Friend is important. Boyd Cordner, I don't think is as much of a loss. And while he's an absolutely brilliant player, let's face it, he didn't play a single game last season. And your forward pack was not the issue. I think where it will be crucial for the Roosters will simply be the spine. And it will be a challenge of depth. I think if I look at the Roosters' success over the last decade, let's be honest, where the Roosters have always been so strong is that middle pack in terms of the depth in the forwards has been phenomenal. And I still think that that's there. I got to say, as a Bulldogs fan, Runa for Tony, I don't know how they managed to let him go. While I'm so positive about the Bulldogs recruitment, which we will come to, I look at him and I think he can really offer you a genuine X factor. He's got great footwork. He's got good leg speed. He's good at getting in between defenders. So he's intelligent in that respect. You know what I mean? I mean this in a really respectful way. If I look at someone like Jason Tomalolo, he puts footwork on at the line, but he doesn't exactly understand what it means to get in between defenders for me. He doesn't understand what it means to get, how do I get from my A defender to my B defender, the inside versus the outside shoulder? If I look at someone like Runa for Tony, he's actually looking for, how do I actually get a player off balance? How do I go at his outside shoulder or his inside shoulder if I've caught him off balance? So I think he can really be an X factor. He's got an offload in him as well. So I think he'll be important. Well, as much as I love Jared Royer-Hargreaves, and I think he is your enforcer, still an absolute leader, but he's getting on. So you do need some young blood there who can step up. So I think that'll be the challenge. In saying that, I still look at that side, so much quality, particularly in the spine. You've got the best fullback in the game, bar none. Well, you could argue Tom Trbojevic, which if people want to argue that, they absolutely would be right to. But if not the best in your mind, then absolutely in the top two. You've got Luke Keary, who for me has been the absolute form half for the last 5 years for me. While he hasn't necessarily done it at an origin level as yet, he's absolutely class. And look, you only have to look back to when the Roosters won the grand final with Cooper Cronk, absolutely busted shoulder. He dictated the whole game. So absolutely phenomenal from him. And I just think the young hooker there, his name eludes me at the moment, stepped in last season, he absolutely brainsed it.
Well, you've got obviously, you had Freddie Lussick that obviously did jump in for a few games. You obviously had Drew Hutchinson that can play in that position. So there is multiple options. The one you are talking about, obviously he is, I believe, suspended in round one. It is Sam Verrills. Obviously he does have that ability. He did play in that grand final against the Canberra Raiders. So he does have that experience in crunch time. So it'll be interesting to see if he can hold that weight, obviously, with Jake Friend and him now in for the whole season with Jake Friend out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I look at the experience he overcame last season in what was a difficult season in terms of, like I mentioned, the injuries that the Roosters faced. He really held his own. And I think Sam Walker, I don't think he'll suffer second-year syndrome. I think with, what is so crucial and what the NRL truthfully lacks, you've got a world-class coach. You've got someone who knows how to manage the team. He knows how to get a lift out of each player. He knows how to motivate each player. And I think by just the level of standards that the Roosters hold themselves to, they're like Melbourne for me, two of the best run clubs in the NRL. And they'll always have that standard. And if he slacks off, I think Trent won't be afraid to drop him. So for that reason, I'm going to say the Roosters second for me. I understand Parramatta. I understand Manly. But I think the mentality is so much more important than the playing roster. And I just think the Roosters got that edge there. They know how to win.
I'll take it. I'll definitely take that. If we finish in that top two, I'll definitely be excited.
I love it. Let's talk about the Bulldogs, shall we?
We might need another 20 minutes because, Larry, there it is, your ins and outs. We've only put the mentionable ones in the outs because there's about 25 of them. But obviously, I'll let you take it away. You've got a few big names in there, but what stands out for you?
Absolutely. Well, if we look at let's look at the ins. I think that's where we should be focusing. This is undoubtedly a massive rebuild for the Bulldogs. Josh Adokar is the main man there, and what a signing he is. Now, in most cases, you'd say it's just a winger, but man, he adds so much pace to a side that's genuinely lacked a class finisher since the Morris boys. Let's be honest with ourselves, which is, I want to say, going on 3 years. So Josh Adokar adds that. Not only that, I think, like I mentioned, I think the mentality is crucial. Josh Adokar is an absolute winner. He's come out of the Melbourne system. He will maintain that standard. He was obviously the captain in the All-Stars match. for the Indigenous side. So I think that that's a genuine leader coming in. Now, all eyes are on Matt Burton. I think that's the crucial one for the Dogs. Now, the question for me is the halves. There's no natural halfback in the side. And that's why I think with all the improvement, I think Matt Burton will absolutely improve the attack. I think Matt Duffy has a point to prove and will be an absolute gun from fullback. In the terms of the forward pack, I think we are starting 13 looks strong. I think the problem with the Dogs is even the bench looks quite weak. And if we have even one injury, I think Dogs are really going to struggle, particularly in the forwards. Backline looks good, but it's a young backline as well. Like you can see that Nick Kotrick has left, Wuha Pawadiev's left. Now, they're not my favorite players in the world, but they do have experience. And the NRL, it'll swallow you up fairly quickly as a young kid. I like Aaron Schropp. I thought he was a breakout star for the Dogs. Can he back it up this season? Time will tell. Braden Burns is a good signing in terms of depth. But yeah, I think because you need a number of things to go right for you when you have a rebuild this big, I think. You need all the players to gel. How quickly that can happen, time will tell. Dogs got a very tricky start to the season as well. We're versing, I think it's, we got Melbourne. We start with the Cowboys. We got the Broncos. And there's someone else in there who's tricky.
You've got the Cowboys into the Broncos, into the Sea Eagles, into Melbourne. So and then Panthers and Rabbitohs. So you have a pretty difficult start to the season.
There you go. And that's the thing. I just wonder for this group of players, it'll be so important to start well. So let's say they win 2 out of 6 to open, because I think that's very realistic. Heck, they can go 0-6. Is this side, given that they haven't played together before, are they able to come together? And I think that's the difficulty for me for the Dogs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is difficult. You've thrown up a few different weaknesses there. I think, like you said, the main one is that depth. If you do lose a Joshua Dekar, who steps up? Like we spoke about with the Roosters, there was always that next man up, and I just don't know if the Bulldogs have that just yet. They obviously do have a bit of an inexperienced coach. That's another one that they're going to have to obviously move forward with. But for me personally, I think there's enough talent in that squad to, even if they do go out and go 2-6, there's a lot of worse teams around them. And obviously we'll talk about them in future episodes, but I've got the Bulldogs in 8th. I've got them sneaking into the top 8. And I think even to come 8th and get knocked out in that first week of finals, that's a win for anyone wearing a Bulldogs jersey.
I love your optimism. I can't seem to get on board with you. So I'm looking at it purely, like, obviously I understand the dynamic of the Bulldogs team at the moment. But if you look at our halves, you got Cole Flanagan, who's on the outer, allegedly. You've got Jake Valero, who for me is an absolute talent, but he's not a halfback. And then you look at the hooker position, Jeremy Marshall-King, an awesome runner of the ball. But if I look at every premiership winner, they've got a dynamic ball-playing hooker. And that's not something that Jeremy Marshall-King really challenges in terms of the cream of the crop, if you're talking about elite hookers in the NRL. And then you look at Duffy now, an absolute talent with the ball. But everyone who's known him, coached him, they all point to 2 things. Brilliant with the ball, he can't organize the defense. So if you've got all of that, it's a new spine coming together, and you don't have an obvious choice for halfback or hooker. Doesn't that concern you a little bit?
I mean, it does concern me. Obviously, that is what most premiership teams do have, but I still look at the teams that finished around that bottom 8 last year, and I think you've got more power than the Raiders, regardless of what your spine is. The Dragons, for example, the Warriors, the Tigers, Brisbane, Cowboys. I see this pack coming together, and if they can stay healthy, purely I'm going based off if they stay healthy, they beat those teams. And I think last year it was only 24 points or 22 points that got you into the final series. And I think I can see this Bulldogs side winning at least 11 games. So I've got them going in. I think Addo-Carr carries them, and Duffy's playing for a contract, and that's huge. He's only got that 1-year contract. He's playing for a new one, so he's there to impress.
I think Paul Vaughan is going to have an absolute beast of a season, by the way. I think he's got a fire under his belly after what happened at the Dragons, and I'm really excited to see what happens there. But look, obviously, if the Dogs come first, I'll be absolutely buzzing. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. But in saying that, I like that I've got an outsider telling me Dogs are going to make the 8. So I'm going to take your word for it. I hope you've liked my view on the Roosters as well. But I think if you are watching this, let us know what you think. Do you think the Bulldogs can finish in the 8th, or do you think they'll be on the outskirts Do you think the Roosters will challenge for the premiership? We both have them in our top 4. So what do you think on the boys from the eastern suburbs? What do you think on the Bulldogs? Stay tuned. Obviously, there are – how many more teams do we have? Have the Dolphins joined us yet? They haven't joined us yet.
There's still 14 teams to go.
14 teams to go. I was about to say 15. 14 teams to go. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you in a bit.
See you soon.